And I also, for the people who are criticizing NATO over this war, I will remind people that NATO is a defensive alliance. What that means is every country in it pledges to defend a country if attacked. And when we were attacked on 9/11, that's what NATO did. They put in Article 5, and for 20 years they fought beside us. NATO is not if any one of the countries decides to unilaterally and unwisely start a war precipitously that everyone else is supposed to join. That's not the way it works. So berating and belittling our allies after we did that and driving them ever further away from us, how is that realistic? Not only are we going to try to reshape the Middle East, but we're going to do it alone while we're pushing everybody away from us. And then we have other tools in our arsenal. You see that those numbers on the budget, but the State Department's really important. Development is really important. These are ways to achieve our ends, and we have moved away from that. We got rid of the entire USAID, literally causing the starvation of children in countries where we had pledged to provide food, causing massive healthcare disruptions, people literally dying because we cut that off. In diplomacy, we have sidelined, again, the entire world. France and the UK have brought together 44 different countries that have an interest in trying to open up the Strait of Hormuz. We've pushed them all aside. And then we've even pushed aside our own diplomatic corps. We have a very, very talented State Department. I praise today the talent of our military, and I will stand by that. They deserve that praise. Our diplomatic corps deserves that praise too. But we've shoved them all to the side in favor of two real estate guys who are going to go negotiate all the deals in the world, which to date, by the way, has yielded exactly nothing. So there's nothing realistic about starting a war in the Middle East, going it alone, and pushing aside all diplomacy and all development and all other tools in our arsenal. And on top of that, of course, we also want to dominate the entire Western Hemisphere, including apparently annexing Canada and invading Greenland. How is any of that realistic? And then the administration comes before us and asks for what is a hopelessly unrealistic budget in this environment. Back on that chart there, when we were showing how much money we were spending on defense, we had a balanced budget. We had a surplus many years. We don't have that anymore. So call this strategy whatever you want to call it, but please don't call it realism. It's not. Forgive me, it reminds me of one of my favorite lines from A Princess Bride. It's a tense morning. I want to lighten it up a little bit. When the guy keeps saying inconceivable when things happen. And finally the guy says to him, "You keep using that word. I don't think you know what it means. I don't think we know what the word realism means. So please, can we not have the realism conversation? Let's have the conversation about what the strategy actually is." And I'm sure you have a different definition of it than I do. But as I look at it, the strategy seems to be to use as much violence, as much threats, as much coercion as possible to bend the world to our will. I think that is a very dangerous strategy because one of the oldest cliches in the military is the enemy gets a vote. And we may think that we can stand up and talk tough and talk about how strong we are and how we're burying our enemies and they're begging for a deal. We can do that all day long, all right? But the enemy gets a vote. They don't have to do what we tell them to do. And meanwhile, that coercive, violent strategy undermines our credibility in the world because the chairman is absolutely right. And this is one area where I strongly disagree with the folks on the far left who say that we don't really face any threats, that the U.S. is a malign influence in the world and always has been. I don't agree with that. China, Russia, Iran, North Korea, Hezbollah, Hamas, the Houthis, variety of other transnational terrorist groups, including, yes, narco-terrorists and human traffickers over here. They all are trying to weaken us, all right? They don't want a rules-based order. They want to play by their own rules. They want to push us aside. We want to be the side that stands up for the rules. But if what we're saying to the rest of the world is stick with us because we're a better bully than China, we coerce countries more effectively, that undercuts the very message we're trying to spread to build the coalition we need to be successful. I also worry about the values that we're showing the world. When the president threatens to kill off an entire civilization, that is the message coming out of the United States of America. If we are going to be this big, powerful force that throws our weight around the world wants to know at a minimum that we're doing it for the right reasons and with a sense of values to protect people, not to destroy entire civilizations. And we all hear that and we all go, well, gosh, he probably doesn't mean it. Well, that is so reassuring, okay, that he's just making it up. We're supposed to be the United States of America. I grew up on stories of the U.S. at the end of World War II being the country that the Germans wanted to surrender to, not the Russians, because they knew they could trust our values. We don't seem to care about those values. No rules of engagement. Give them no quarter, all right? That is not who we are supposed to be. And just one final point on that, the girls' school that got hit in the first days of this war. There is absolutely no question at this point what happened. We made a mistake, and that happens in war. We identified this target based on earlier charts, and yet 2 months after it happened, we refused to say anything about it, giving the world the impression that we just don't care. We do not care about the casualties and the chaos that is caused by our war, and we should care, even if we want to prosecute that war. Now, I agree with the chairman. We need a strategy. We face the most complex threat environment that we've faced in a very, very long time. So we really want to hear from the administration. Don't give us this realism, chest-thumping stuff. What are we really going to do to meet those threats, to deal with the challenges we face? And I'll close just by saying one of the other ironies of this, of course, is we have a great example in the world right now of what our strategy should be and where our values should be, and that's Ukraine. And I'm really curious, here we are, we roll out the red carpet for Vladimir Putin. We belittle and insult President Zelensky in the White House. He has no cards, right? Well, here we are a year after that. Looks like he had a couple cards to play, because Ukraine is actually winning against Russia. Ukraine, a sovereign democracy standing up against a brutal, oppressive, coercive dictatorship. And we can't even bring ourselves on a consistent basis to say, we are with Ukraine and we are against what Putin is doing, and stand up and support them. So I want to see that strategy to meet the complex threat environment that we have. But simply saying we've already won and boasting and bragging and trying to belittle and insult the entire world, that's not going to get us to the posture that we need. So I hope we have a conversation about how we can build a strategy that makes sense and is actually realistic. With that, I yield.